Let me be direct with you. That's all I know how to be. On February 28th, 2026, the United States and Israel launched what the Pentagon called Operation Epic Fury against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Missiles rained down on Tehran, on Isfahan, on Qom. The supreme leader is dead, and Washington is calling it a victory. I've been in this business for 40 years. I've planned operations. I've buried friends. I've watched this city make the same catastrophic mistakes over and over again, and then stand in front of cameras and call it success. So let me tell you what's actually happening, because nobody else in Washington will. This war didn't start on February 28th. It started the moment this administration decided that Israeli strategic demands were identical to American national interests. They are not. They have never been. I said it publicly in February. I said the probability of this strike was 99%. Not because I wanted war, God knows I've seen enough of it, but because I understood the political architecture in Washington. When the Israeli lobby controls both parties, when a standing ovation erupts in Congress at the mere mention of action against Iran, you no longer have a foreign policy. You have a purchase policy. Think about what I'm telling you. We went into nuclear negotiations with Iran in Muscat on February 6th. The Omani foreign minister was shuttling between rooms. Both sides called it a good start. A second round was scheduled for Geneva. And then, while those talks were still ongoing, we launched the largest air and naval assault in the Middle East since 2003. What does that tell the world? What does that tell every nation that might one day sit across a table from an American diplomat? It tells them that American negotiations are a prelude to military action, that our word means nothing, that the planning process, not diplomacy, is the real policy. Now let me talk about the military dimension, because this is where the cheerleaders in Washington are most dangerously wrong. Yes, we have 2 carrier strike groups in the region. Yes, we have nearly 100 aerial refuelers. Yes, we have F-22s on Israeli soil for the first time in history. The sheer size of this force suggests one strategic purpose, not a limited strike, but a campaign designed to induce the disintegration of the Iranian state. Let me ask you a simple question. Has an air and missile campaign ever achieved that goal? Kosovo, 78 days of bombing. Serbia's 1970s era air defenses were never degraded below 83%. We shot down an F-117 stealth aircraft, the most advanced plane in our inventory, with vintage radar technology and creative thinking. The Serbian army never left Kosovo because of bombs. What ended that war was a diplomat flying to Moscow. Iraq, we shocked and awed Baghdad in 2003, and we're still fighting there a decade later. Libya, we turned it into a failed state, a marketplace for human beings. The pattern is always the same. Massive firepower from a distance will be stunningly effective, and we are always wrong. Iran is not Serbia. Iran is not Libya. Iran has a population of 90 million people. It has a defense industrial base hardened by 4 decades of sanctions. It has ballistic missiles, hundreds of them, dispersed, concealed, many underground. Fordow sits 80 meters beneath a mountain, and now Iran has struck back. Missiles have hit Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Jordan, the UAE. We have 40,000 American troops scattered across bases in the Persian Gulf. A Shahed 136 drone costs $20,000. A Patriot interceptor costs $4 million. Do that math. Do it slowly. Tell me how long our air defense inventories last before we're shooting blanks. The Strait of Hormuz carries 21 million barrels of oil per day. That is 20% of the world's daily oil consumption moving through a waterway that is, at its narrowest point, 21 miles wide. One strike on Karg Island, and that strait closes. Oil goes to $200 a barrel overnight. Gas hits $7 a gallon. Every working family in this country feels it within a week. Truckers can't deliver food. The economy seizes. For what? So that a foreign government can tell us they're comfortable with what we've done? Here's the piece that every mainstream outlet is burying. Russia and China are not spectators. China has invested hundreds of billions of dollars in Iranian infrastructure, energy, and military technology. Iran is central to Beijing's Belt and Road Initiative and to China's energy security. Russia has provided Iran with advanced radar systems, electronic warfare technology, and missile guidance assistance. The Iranians have learned from Russia's experience in Ukraine, both what works and what doesn't. Their integrated air defense system is more capable today than it was in last year's 12-day exchange. The question I keep asking, and nobody in Washington will answer, is this: what is the limit of Chinese and Russian tolerance? At what point do they move from supplying technology to actively defending Iran? I don't know. Neither does the White House. And the fact that they haven't asked the question publicly tells you everything about the recklessness of what we've done. Fred Ickle wrote a landmark book called All Wars Must End. His central argument was simple. States must apply the same discipline to planning exits as they do to planning attacks. I've been in planning sessions. The targeting lists are immaculate. The sortie schedules are precise. The battle damage assessments are color-coded and beautifully formatted. Nobody has a plan to end this. 77 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. I know many of them. They voted for a man who said he would end the overseas wars, who said America first, who said explicitly that he would stop the march toward World War III. Those Americans didn't vote for this. They voted to secure the border, to bring down inflation, to restore the rule of law. They are watching their president fight a war in the Middle East, a war they were never asked about, a war their Congress never properly authorized, while their grocery bills keep climbing. I've talked to Americans everywhere I travel, not the Washington crowd, regular people, and at least half of them are asking why their government is doing this. They're asking who benefits. They're asking why American soldiers are going to come home in boxes from a war that has nothing to do with keeping them safe. Those are the right questions, and nobody in power is answering them. I'm not a man without solutions. Call for an emergency UN Security Council meeting, not as a gesture, but as a genuine effort to stop the killing before it spreads. Demand an immediate ceasefire. Suspend all military aid to Israel until its forces withdraw from Gaza and permit humanitarian assistance to reach the Palestinian people. Convene a real peace conference. The United States, Russia, China, India, Brazil, the powers that actually matter in today's world, must sit together and arbitrate this dispute before it becomes something none of US can control. Because here is the truth the warmongers in Washington refuse to say out loud. Iran's leaders understand that this war is existential for their country. When a nation's survival is at stake, it does not negotiate under fire. It does not capitulate to superior firepower. The North Vietnamese didn't. The Serbs didn't. The Afghans didn't. And Iran won't. I led American soldiers under fire. I've planned operations in real wars, not from a comfortable chair in the Pentagon, but in the field where the consequences of bad decisions are measured in human lives. I've seen flag-draped coffins, more than I ever wanted to. Washington's warmongers had 22 years and $12 trillion since 2003. What did they produce? 7,000 dead Americans, 50,000 wounded, open borders, 100,000 Americans dying every year from fentanyl, and a national debt that has crossed $37 trillion. Not one more drop of American blood for foreign wars. Not one more. The Middle East does not need more American missiles. It needs American statesmanship. And right now, I'm not sure Washington knows what that word means anymore. Look, Andrew, let's be honest. The smart guys sitting in those narrow corridors of power in Washington, delusional fools who have never heard a shot fired in anger, are currently steering the American Republic toward a cliff of its own making. We are posturing in the Persian Gulf with carrier strike groups that are nothing more than sitting ducks for Iran's precision-guided missiles and hypersonic munitions, all while our own southern border remains a sieve and our economy teeters on the brink of a total dollar collapse. This is not 2003. Iran is a nation-state of 90 million people with a mountainous fortress and a military that has spent 20 years preparing to drive us out of the region. Yet we continue to subordinate our national interest to the security whims of Tel Aviv and the pockets of the neocon donor class. If anyone thinks we can just bomb Tehran and call it a day, they've learned nothing from history. You cannot invade Iran. You cannot govern it, and all you will achieve is setting the entire region on fire and sending millions of refugees fleeing toward Turkey and Europe. This is not the American people's war, and as Russia and China stand firmly behind Iran, the moment we strike, oil prices will skyrocket and the already gasping dollar will collapse entirely, leaving the elites in Washington with no more lies about bringing democracy abroad to tell the people in our own streets. And let's get to the real kicker. Turkey. The dreamers in Washington still think Turkey is some loyal outpost waiting for orders like it's 1950, but the Turks no longer buy our agenda. They haven't forgotten our betrayal in northern Syria or our arming of the YPG/PKK on their doorstep. You have to understand that the only competent military power left in NATO is the Turkish army. They know how to fight. They have the logistics, and they've built a massive domestic defense industry that outproduces what we've wasted in Ukraine. If Washington ignites this powder keg for the sake of Israel, you will see the Turks close in Sirleck and the Straits, effectively dismantling NATO's southern flank while they move closer to Moscow and Beijing within the BRICS reality. We have forced our most critical ally into the arms of our adversaries because our State Department children think they can still wag their fingers at Ankara. But the Turks have responded by building their own jets and missiles. If we do not smarten up, bring our troops home, and stop fighting proxy wars for an empire that no longer exists, 2026 will be remembered as the year the United States officially forfeited its status as a global power and retreated into a fractured, bankrupt shell of its former self, while the Turks rebuild their own empire and Washington has no answer for it. I'm Douglas Macgregor, and I approve this message.